This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Hi, Lance.
Hey, how's it going, Todd?
Good, dude. Lance Lambert, bovedainc.com. I was just telling my last guest, I got this weird last few days, last few weeks, anxiety going. It's like I don't sleep enough because of the baby, and then I think it kicks you into a different gear where I'm like hyper but tired. It's like kind of a weird. I need some. What should I be taking to chill me out a little bit, Lance? Is what I'm asking you.
Oh my gosh. First thing that popped in my head was CBD, but maybe CBG and then THCA, which is the non-decarboxylated iteration of THC, is actually really healthy to kind of keep you balanced. So there's a couple different solutions, and they're now available thanks to the latest status of legalization in Canada.
Wait, what? There's something out. What? The CBG?
Yeah, CBG. So now I'm personally a favorite. We brought this up before about CBN, because CBN is really that natural solution for sleep issues. But cannabidiol, which is CBG, is a whole other form. And a lot of people very much look to CBG for several different reasons. And again, we've talked about before, we don't give any sort of investment advice. We don't give any sort of medical advice because that's not our background or repertoire. But we could reference some of the elements of these things. And CBG, just like CBD, is non-psychoactive, but it does play an important role in the biochemistry of the cannabis plant. So it's almost like a chemical precursor to other cannabinoids such as THC and CBD. So it's something that takes place later on in the plant's development. But how it works is really interesting because it interacts with both the CB1 and CB2 receptors. So we've talked about that before as well, right? So THC really geeks out on focusing on those CB1 receptors, which is above the neck, where CBD, cannabidiol, which again has been kind of that hero cannabinoid around the world, not just in Canada and the U.S., that more so focuses on the CB2 receptors, which is the neck down. So that's really body, right? Body versus heady. So yeah, they've found it to help it lower intraocular pressure. That was something that came out in the 1990 study. There was a 2008 study that found possible benefits of treatment with MRSA, due to antibacterial and antifungal properties. So again, it's just something that when you're talking more about immune system, for me, CBG kind of comes out of that suite of cannabinoids that we have to reference from this plant.
Unreal, man. And there could be hundreds of other properties apparently, right?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's interesting. Here in North America, we've uncovered several hundred. I think we're up to around 435. But I believe I shared before this trip over to Israel where by far the most advanced university, it's a university that studies around cannabis and cancer, they've uncovered around 900 cannabinoids from this plant. So it really is an enigma in a good way. That's why I thought it was a little cheesy years ago when people always reference it as a miracle plant. And then the more I learned about it, I understood that they meant that literally, not metaphorically. It really, all the different attributes and all the different things it does, and the fact that we have an endocannabinoid system that these cannabinoids plug right into, right? That really was the thing that took me over the top, just being very impressed with the dynamic of it. So it's fun stuff. It's really fun stuff.
Oh, man, that's so awesome, man. I can't believe all the educational things that, it's so, we've been talking for years now, and sometimes we reiterate, stuff we talk about, because let's be honest, at the end of the day, there's only so much you can talk about. But then on the other hand, there really is a lot still to discover. Like it is... because listen, I live and breathe this stuff, and as you know, I'm involved even now on the psychedelic side of things with a company we're trying to, one day take public on that angle, and the new talk, everywhere. I think we've seen a lot of different things in the last couple of years. So let's be honest, we saw a lot of euphoria, okay, and especially in the publicly traded space, we saw a lot of euphoria. A bit of a too many people were talking about it, almost to the point where like this bubble's got to pop. But I think we've been described that it's not that the bubble's popping, it's just that we're getting back to where it's supposed to be. And unlike, and you were a part of it, Lance Lambert was with us, you saw and lived through the tech bubble. The tech bubble couldn't exist because the supply actually, the demand wasn't there for so many different sites, for so many different things. At the end of the day, as human beings, we kind of gravitate all to the same places. And all you got to do is go to Facebook or Amazon or LinkedIn or, there's only so many that survive for a reason because we're kind of sheepish. But in a product-based business, there is still so much opportunity in my mind, and still so much growth, and still so much knowledge, and still so many people to serve. And we're like, again, not to reiterate where we are, but it's still so early.
It is. It so is, man. The way you put it, you summed it up quite nice. And I always reference that, being a part of the evolution that was .com and the digital media space was huge. I think it served to a certain extent. It has its pros and cons. But to be a part of this evolution, really did humble me because it's for a bigger cause. It makes a bigger impact. And again, that's where my advocacy comes in on the medical side of, having, a second cousin with autism, having friends that deal with epileptic and grand mal seizures, how it affects them. But to your point, this is a tangible good we're talking about. We were dealing in the mysterious world of intangibles back during .com. Someone would come up with a clever name. So I love about, a series that Mike Judge came out with on HBO that kind of gets into almost exploiting this whole fantasy world that is, .com in Silicon Valley. And it's a really good point. But here it is for something bigger, but it's still the leading edge of where we could be. So it's the infant stages. And you're right. It's not that the bomb, right? We just call it the .com bomb, right? So post.com bomb. And it's not so much here, to your point, it's just normalizing to where we should be. I think there was a lot of hype, a lot of hoopla, to your point, especially 5 years ago. And it just kept climbing. But you can only get so far with 60 and 70x valuations. Really it has to come out of the stratosphere and come back down to reality as far as what the true plausibility is for the industry. So that's where we really are now.
Well, and speaking of that infancy, here's a look at cannabis legalization in countries around the world. There's been some advancements, correct?
Yeah. So legislation, obviously there's a lot of legislation that's in the works all around. I mean, I've told you there's 1,200 different bills and such up on the Hill just here in the U.S., but looking at it around the world, I really want to share, again, of acknowledgement of being a year into the game for Canada on the adult use side. But, I've mentioned before how there's been prime ministers visiting Canada and seeing how things are going over there. And one of them's Luxembourg. So Luxembourg, this is a small nation right in the middle of the EU. The population's about 615,000. So to put it in perspective, they've got about 140,000 less in their population than the province of New Brunswick. So it's not by any means a large country, but they're kind of pivotal in the fact that they are a keystone country just based in their proximity to the rest of the Union. And they have announced, this has been out there for a bit, but they have announced that they are going to move forward with adult use legalization. The one thing that was cool, though, was their health minister, Etienne Schneider, recently told Euronews Television Network that the country's cannabis legislation will be, quote, inspired by the Canadian model. I think that's huge for another country to acknowledge that the first world G7 country that is Canada, move things forward and is definitely influencing other places as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's really good to know, and that's sort of what Canada will eventually take most pride of is that they made this big initiative happen. A lot of people still angry with the way it's happening, based on not enough. And again, not to reiterate, but based on not enough supply, really, from the legal market, which is making it still the black markets kind of survive and things. But that's really good. That's really interesting to know that Luxembourg, isn't that where's that, like France, Germany area? Is that around there?
Yes. Yeah, just east of France. So it's, again, its proximity to countries like Belgium, to the Netherlands, to France. I mean, it really
I feel like I think I thought it was a city, to be honest. I don't think I realized Luxembourg was its own. No, I'm serious. I don't think I knew it was its own country.
It's kind of a small one, but it's kind of hammered right between Germany, Belgium, and France. So
I just think, sorry to interrupt you, Lance. I just think from my history lesson of that area, it was, to be honest, like sad to say, but like where the Nazis took over, was there? I mean, would they have been in Luxembourg too then?
Yep, that was part
Okay.
of it. So that's very interesting, too. When you visit Europe, they talk about cities that were bombed and not bombed during World War. Kind of sad, but that is a reference point for a better part of the European bloc, even into the Eastern European bloc. But that is definitely a country that that was passed through during that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Wow. Sorry to bring it down a notch, Lance Lambert.
That's right.
Well. Okay. Maybe it's a decent segue anyway. From some nastiness. What are the worst places? We'll stay on that word worst, but again, we're not trying to trivialize what we were talking about. Places on earth to be caught with weed.
Yeah, this is something that, again, just, we're a year into the game, so kind of want to bring this up because it's something that hit my radar from the Growth Op. And I think it's interesting to know that there are some places that you very much, as much as cannabis has become normalized and accepted and to a certain extent destigmatized in our countries, we need to be cognizant of places we travel to. And I know not everyone's traveling around the world, but people do plan for certain trips and vacations, and they want to include what they're accustomed to back home. So one thing that an official Canada travel advisory warning to the citizens up there shared was, quote, cannabis is illegal in most countries and government of Canada cannot intervene on your behalf. So it's putting out there that while it is legal here, definitely there's other countries where it's not so the case. And there's definitely, it's not too long a list, but there are certain places. One that came to mind as soon as I started reading this was Singapore. I'd been there to speak back in my .com days on digital media, and beautiful city-state, used to be under British rule, Indian rule. English is actually one of their 4 official languages, so it's very welcoming to Western travelers. It really is, I'd say, as far as Asia, it's where the East meets West, in my opinion, for Singapore. Having said that, they have some of the strictest rules and regulations around narcotics in the world. And you would think it'd be just something as simple as lashings, but the harshest cannabis prosecutor, being Singapore, they actually go as far as capital punishment. And that would be something of a larger, say 500 grams of cannabis, which, accounts to roughly 1,000 joints. So that in their mind would be intent for distribution. But that's where you start running the risk of obviously life or death. So that's an extreme. But there are others that aren't quite as bad. I mean, there's places you want to avoid, like the Middle East is another good example. There's been some interesting stories over the years of people who have traveled through Abu Dhabi, Dubai, where they've had issues. And again, Saudi Arabia, they routinely execute hashish dealers. This is something, it happens in a country that beheads roughly 150 people a year. Of those 150 people, drug-related executions make up to 40% of those. So, again, I'm not trying to scare. I'm just trying to put into perspective that just because it's becoming normalized in North America, because we know Mexico's all but legalized adult use already. They're going through the semantics right now with the government, but they're going to be kicking off here shortly. So in all of North America, you can travel from Alaska through Canada to the very edge of Mexico down to Cancun or Cabo, 100% legally consumed cannabis everywhere along that coast. But keep it in mind, if you're going to another country, especially on another continent, just really do your homework and make sure you know.
Yeah, very well said. And that's really just some of the stuff just shock. I laugh out of uncomfortableness. Like I sort of think about how progressive and advanced, certain countries are compared to other countries. Even just to hear beheading, I'm sorry, like I don't care if that sounds shocking to people, but the fact that a beheading could still happen for any crime, let alone cannabis sales, is pretty disturbing in my mind. Lance Lambert with us from BovedaInc.com, and we're just about a week or so past where Canada now made edibles and topicals and concentrates legals in about a minute here. Is that, from what you've heard, is that rollout going well?
It is going well. I mean, it's something that just so the general pop knows that it is going to be a little delay. So just because it's come into legalization as of last week, there's a few months needed still for ramp up. A couple of quick things to know. Edibles have definitely garnered the most attention. It's the easiest way to consume, but still, like we've talked about, being cognizant of how your body processes when it's actually induced versus inhaled or used as a topical or elixir. Also knowing that no alcohol can be associated with anything when it comes to cannabis. So you aren't going to find some sort of alcohol-flavored infused drink with THC. That's another thing that was very strict. But there has to be distinctive THC markings on everything, which is good to know. And obviously some of the legal possessions and such, edibles, it's only allowed for no more than 10 milligrams of THC, which is a standard here in the States as well. That's considered a single dosage. We've talked about it. I recommend halving it. If anyone is going to go out there and try edibles now that it's legal, I know the average dose of is 10 milligrams, but you're talking about, to many, comparable to at least 2 or 3 shots when you're looking at 10 milligrams THC. So start slow, go low. We've said it before. It's a campaign in Canada. It's a campaign in several of the legal states here when it comes to cannabis, but always start slow and go low.
Yeah, I think we need still more education, especially on the edible side of things. I don't care about the small dosages. People can see a bag or whatever and maybe eat them all. It's not pretty sometimes. So people I'm serious, man. I'm a big believer in everything for people, but you got to learn. We need to learn, and I'm just there's part of me that's a little fearful in how that'll eventually go when the products are actually available. So thank you, and I'm grateful for you just trying to warn people and make sure that we're educational with this message. BovedaInc.com or two-way humidity control packs, keeping your medical flower fresh, keeping the cannabis fresh, let's be honest. Hashtag Boveda Cannabis. Again, don't touch the plant and ancillary to it, but very, very successful company with an amazing representative in Lance Lambert, and we always love this time. We can't wait for MJ Biz in Vegas in just over a month.
Yeah.
Or 2 months, a month and a bit, but yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Oh, yeah, like 5 weeks. It's going to be the 11th through the 13th. Let me know if I need to call your wife and make sure we have permission to steal you away to the States here for a few days. But we are very excited to have you down. We're having a phenomenal after party one night, and you are going to be my honorary guest to that. So,
okay. I think I'll make it. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
Cheers, brother.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.